Hello, everybody, and welcome to a hump day edition of the Southside Beat. My name is Chris Halicke. Thank you for joining me today. Yes, getting a late start today. I at least put the start time 10 minutes later because I knew I was going to be late today. Just had some work stuff to take care of real quick and wanted to get on here, but also wanted to, like I said, when I put the start time where it was, like I wanted to let you guys know, hey, like, listen, it's going to be probably about 10 minutes late. And so here we go. Appreciate everybody tuning in. If you're watching here live, thank you so much for joining. Bring your questions. I'm always good to have conversation here with you guys. Would love all of your feedback, all of your questions, concerns. I really appreciate it. And William brings it here and said, oh no, Matt and Chris caught the moan bug. Ramon show is later today. That's starting in about 48 minutes. So definitely stay tuned after today's episode is over to obviously tune into Ramon, because that's the show, man. That's the marquee show right on this channel. So yep. And some people are talking about it here in the chat. Yep. Ramon show later today here in less than an hour. Excited about that. And again, really appreciate everybody tuning in. We got a lot of great feedback from the show with Matt Williamson yesterday. I knew it was going to be awesome because, like I said, I've chatted football with Matt, quite a bit over, since having this job. And if you haven't watched it or listened to it, I really urge you to go back. I thought it was really great football talk. You guys got some great shows. Sorry, you guys got some good questions. I'm literally reading words as I'm trying to also speak. It's not a good idea. You guys brought some great questions. It was just a great show overall. I really appreciate all of that. I thought it was great, and we'll definitely have Matt on again. We'll see how often we can do it. I don't know if it'll be like a weekly thing or a bi-weekly thing or monthly. I'm not quite sure. Matt obviously has his has his stuff that he does. And, we just want to, but we also want to bring him on as often as we can. Cause he's awesome. Like he's a fun guy to chat football with from my perspective, just because of where he comes from, how he sees the game. I learn more from it. But I think also, like just saw yesterday, it was a good football conversation. I thought that's what it was. Really, before we get into any questions, some people are asking about like the house and stuff like that. We're moving in that direction. We're not under contract on a house up there yet. We have swung and missed on 3 houses. We have made offers, and one of them was very competitive, offered significantly more than the asking price, but just didn't work. So it is what it is. We'll get there. But once again, going to just continue to let you guys know I will be there by the time training camp starts. I'm actually waiting to hear back about an offer today. If that falls through for whatever reason, we have another house that we're going to be making an offer on later today. So we're plugging away, continuing to do it. But I appreciate you guys checking in on that. Before I get to some questions, I wanted to hit on, just the fact that, hey, listen, today is July 3rd. That is 3 weeks exactly from the day that players report to training camp. So we are 3 weeks away from training camp beginning. That first day, yes, it's not a practice day. It's when players are reporting, but we'll be there to talk to the players as they report, as they walk up to the dorms. It's a fun day. Players are, it almost has that first day of school type of vibe a little bit. But it's a fun day because it really lets us know that football activity is actual football. I'll put it that way, is beginning. It's on the horizon. And yeah, this summer, like Cody says it here, that it's going by fast. Yeah. The summer is going by really quickly. So definitely, yeah. Yeah. Barbara says, hey, Chris, let me know if you want to forcibly remove someone from the house of your choice here. That's funny, man. I would love to, but don't want to break any laws on the way to getting a good house. But no, we have, the good thing is that we're not married to just one town, or we have a couple of different school districts we like, and so we're just trying to get a house within one of those two school districts. It's a good place that's kind of between where I have to be, obviously, for work, and then also with where my family is up here, or up there. I'm excited about it. But 3 weeks from training camp, man. And the one thing I wanted to really hit on today, and we'll have more time to talk about it, but I at least wanted to begin the conversation now that we are 3 weeks away, is some of the things that I'm looking forward to when training camp begins, things that I'm going to be watching out for as a reporter. Right. Like everybody covers training camp a little bit different. And if you're, a person who, obviously, if you want your Steelers content exclusively at DK Pittsburgh Sports.com, obviously we like, that's awesome. That's what we want. We want to be able to be a one-stop shop for you. And once I get up there, it'll be a lot easier to have control of that from my perspective, because again, trying to even analyze a team from a distance, it's difficult to do, because really you're just at the mercy of what you can watch on a screen instead of actually going and covering it. And so as a reporter, I'm going to give you some of the things that I'm looking forward to. Now, these obviously could align with just like, hey, that's, Captain Obvious. Like, obviously, how do the quarterbacks look? How does Russell Wilson look in the offense? How does Justin Fields look in the offense? Stuff like that. Those things kind of go without saying. But some of the things that I'm going to be looking for, number one is, well, I won't necessarily put these in order of importance. I'll just kind of list them out. So, just first thing that I'll put is a very obvious, like, kind of like position battle at tackle. There aren't too many legitimate position battles with this, in this upcoming training camp. That, there are a few, and the tackle one might be the most important, but there are a lot of layers to it. If is Broderick Jones just given, okay, you're our starting left tackle, is he given that right away? It's one thing with where he's lining up during OTAs and minicamp. It's something else entirely whenever they actually start taking the field during training camp at Saint Vincent College. It's a little bit different. Is Broderick Jones given that right away? Is he the left tackle all the time? Like, every time first team's lining up, he's the guy on the left side. Is that the case? Does Dan Moore still get some reps there? How often is Troy Fautanu up there with the first team guys? Does he ever get up there with the first team guys in the first week? Those are the little things to watch out for. And it's not just, and Joshua Dobbs brings up, he brings up like O-line reps, middle linebacker reps, and wide receiver reps. Like, watching the reps is one thing, yes, but obviously it's like, counting reps is one thing. Watching the quality of the reps is another thing, but it's also, doing a little bit more digging, some of that on the record, some of that, on background, where you're, trying to get some information, talking to the players themselves, how they're, attacking training camp, because at this, one thing is, they're teammates, so they want to support each other, but at the same time, Dan Moore wants to be the starting left tackle. Broderick Jones, it probably, if he had his way, like in a perfect world, would be the starting left tackle. And Troy Fautanu, if he had his way, would probably be the starting right tackle. And obviously you can't have two starting left tackles. So there are a lot of different layers to that particular position, because in my opinion, it would be best case scenario for the Steelers to, regardless of Dan Moore's comfort level, which obviously he has been on the record in stating that he is more comfortable on the left side, or that he really can only play the left side. I think, trying to figure out the right way I want to put it. Like, all right, let me start over real quick. Okay. Dan Moore wants to play the left side. Broderick Jones ideally wants to play the left side. It would be best for the Steelers if they just went ahead, and it doesn't have to be a situation in which you automatically hand the job to Broderick Jones and you automatically hand the right tackle job to Troy Fautanu. But it really just would be best for the Steelers if they just started the two young guys right away. And it's just the best way to go, because number one, the concerns came up like yesterday when Matt and I were talking about like the running game and, learning a new system. There are going to be growing pains. Have all the growing pains go at once, right? I mean, just get it all over with. Like it's like ripping off a Band-Aid. Just do it right away. Do it quickly. Don't hesitate. Just do it. And it's going to be painful for a little while, but then, typically by the time that the dust settles and the pain's gone, that, everything's better. And I think the best way for the Steelers to go about it would be to just put Broderick Jones on the left, put Troy Fautanu on the right, and just say, you know what? I'm sorry. We're not trying to alienate Dan Moore, but listen, he's not the future here. Like, if we believe that these two guys, and shoot, man, they've drafted both of these guys back to back in the first round in back-to-back years. They obviously believe to a certain extent by just the investment that they've put in these guys, that these are their bookends. So just get to it. So yeah, just like, this is one of those times where you don't want Mike Tomlin to pull another Kendrick Green and just hand a job to a guy. But at the same time, it's like, with what the team is invested, it's just best to just Broderick Jones is the guy on the left, Fautanu is the guy on the right. Just go with it. And then Dan Moore, if he's still on the team this year, if he's not traded at all during training camp or preseason, then he figures a way to be the swing tackle. He just figures a way. You're a professional. You got to figure out a way to do it. So that's the one thing I'm looking for. And I'm curious, again, not to just like count the reps and see who's where and how often and how those reps look, but it's really just like, I want to go deeper than that. I don't want to just go for the surface stuff. I want to go, okay, how's Dan Moore approaching this? How's Broderick Jones approaching this? How's Troy Fautanu approaching this? How are the other offensive linemen viewing how these guys are going about it? Because it's going to be talked about. Like, I'm obviously not going to be the only one talking about this. There's every media outlet is. Fans are going to be talking about it. And so it's going to be something I'm really curious to watch. Another thing that I really want to watch is, Matt and I talked a little bit about it yesterday. It's not just like, oh, how does the offense look? Like, what do they do? Like, what kind of formations are they like? I want to see, and again, players aren't going to tip their hands. They're not going to be like, oh yeah, here's all the secrets to the offense. I want to see what Arthur Smith's offense looks like in terms of the running game. Is this really going to be just another installment of Arthur Smith going with a very predominant wide zone system? Or is he going to kind of get with the, I won't say get with the times. I would just get with, I guess, the trend that some of the other best offensive minds in the game are doing, and throw in more gap concepts. Again, doesn't have to be a complete overhaul in which the Steelers become a gap team. And I think that is pretty, I think you can pretty much go ahead and just say the Steelers aren't going to do that. Their offensive line isn't built to do that. They don't have a lot of big mauler guys. Like I'm talking about big, huge, gigantic defensive line eaters that can just move guys. They have guys who, yes, they've, some of them really do have a good mean streak to them, but they're athletic. Both Matt and I mentioned it yesterday. They've got 6 guys at least who can pull for any kind of blocking assignment. Broderick Jones, Matt really talked about it yesterday. Broderick Jones pulling from the right tackle spot last year and making the blocks on the opposite side. Broderick Jones can do that. Fautanu is absolutely athletic enough to do the same thing from the right side. If Dan Moore is out there, Dan Moore is athletic enough to pull in gap concepts. And then obviously your center and your guards can do those things too. They've got 6 guys who are capable of being very athletic. And so with when you have, at least, above average, but I would say good athleticism on the offensive line all the way across, there's not one weak link. That pretty much tells you the Steelers still value some zone, at least some zone in their system. Otherwise, you do what the Rams did, get a bunch of guys who are just better gap blockers and become a gap team. I don't think that's what the Steelers are going to be doing. But I am curious to see, because again, it would almost be a huge disappointment based off of what the running game looked like down the stretch last year when they did start kind of going more 50-50 with the zone and the gap stuff. Because before then, I don't know the exact number, but just if I had to guess, it was more like 65-35 in terms of like zone versus gap. It was predominantly zone, specifically outside zone. And watching whenever Eddie Faulkner and Mike Sullivan became a little bit more gap oriented and it was more of a 50-50 split, Naji and Jaylen really just both took off. And I mean, Jaylen's a better gap runner anyway. Matt brought up the numbers yesterday. I've talked about him in my Chalk Talks several times, that how much better Jaylen's numbers are in gap versus zone. And then watching what Naji did when he's typically been a better zone runner than he has been gap. But when he was running behind power down the stretch last year, he was a beast. Like nobody was stopping Naji. He was getting 5-6 yards almost every single time. So, I'm going to be curious to watch every time they run the ball. What are the offensive linemen doing? That's an outside zone run. Like even if it's not like a full blown, like offense versus defense rep, like how often am I seeing them do zone runs? How often am I seeing them do gap? I want to see something that's going to resemble like, okay, is this just going to be just like what we've seen, especially in Atlanta? Is this just going to be wide zone to the cows come home? Cody says it here, should be a mix, always the best way. I agree. I do think it should be a mix. And I think that with Arthur Smith's offense and his system that he's deployed previously in Tennessee and Atlanta, there will be zone. There will be wide zone in there. It's ingrained in his system. But again, you can do more things. And if Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay can do it, and I whether it gets hate or not, I don't care. When Shanahan and McVay were tearing defenses apart with their wide zone stuff, Arthur Smith was right there with them, doing the same thing. Not quite, wasn't ever put in that same breath as those two, as Shanahan and McVay. But like I said, those 2019 and 2020 Titans offenses were really, really good, really productive. Like they racked up yards and they scored points. They were just good offenses, period. And yeah, everybody's just like, oh, we had Derrick Henry. It's like, yeah, but those were Derrick Henry's 2 best years. Like you can go through and look at the rest of the seasons. Like, yeah, he had some other like really good seasons, no doubt. But his 2 monster years, like the 2 best years of Derrick Henry, where people think of like, oh, that's King Henry. Those were when Arthur Smith was the offensive coordinator. And that's when Ryan Tannehill was the quarterback. And again, 2 best seasons of Ryan Tannehill's career were those 2 seasons that Arthur Smith was the offensive coordinator. It's not a coincidence. Like I'm not gonna just say it's, oh, that's just coincidence. Like, no, it's not coincidence. So Arthur Smith was right there with those guys using the wide zone stuff. Now, again, it's that cat and mouse game at the NFL level. Offense starts doing this, defense has to adjust to help neutralize it. Then the offense has to change things. It's like one is trying to always stay one step ahead of the other. And right now, and when the wide zone stuff was tearing defenses apart, defenses started getting, more prepared for that. They started drafting better for that. They started scheming up things to defend it better. And now you're seeing Shanahan and McVay turn into more gap teams. I said it yesterday, the Rams ran duo more than any other concept. That's a gap concept. Ran duo more than any other concept last year, and they ran the ball insanely well. Kyren Williams was 3rd in the NFL in rushing. Like, there's a reason why you see guys change. And if those guys can alter their systems, then Arthur Smith can do it too. And the thing is that he's smart enough. That's why I would like. And Lifton once says, Henry was in his prime. To be fair, it's like, I'm not denying that, but again, it's just those were statistically those were his 2 best seasons. Like, I'll pull up his numbers right now. He entered the league in 2016, right? I mean, he was a 2nd round pick in the 2016 draft. Before then, he had, ages. So 3 seasons before then were ages 22, 23, 24. He had 490 yards, 744 yards. And then his first 1,000-yard season was in 2018. He had 1,059 yards, averaged 4.9 yards per carry. That's whenever you're like, okay, but he didn't make the Pro Bowl and he wasn't all pro. And then 2019, he goes from like what those numbers were in 2018 to 1,540 yards and 16 touchdowns, where he averaged a league best 102.7 yards per game, made the Pro Bowl and was a 2nd team All Pro. And then the next year was, insane, with 2,027 yards, 17 touchdowns, averaged a league best 126.7 yards per game, and was Offensive Player of the Year, 1st team All Pro, Pro Bowl. Like, the best offensive player in the game. And those were his 2 seasons under. And like, again, he's had some good seasons since then. His 21 season was cut short. He only played 8 games and he had 937 yards. Like, that's but even then, like, he was averaging 117 yards a game. The numbers went down a little bit. That was age 27. Ages 28 and 29 the past 2 seasons. Again, good seasons, productive seasons. 1,538 yards in 22, 1,167 last year. But his yards per game, 22 was 96.1 yards. 23 was only 68.6 yards. This is when he's still in his 20s. Like, the drop off is not completely. Again, I'm not going to believe that it's a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidence. And so I think. And so some of you are even bringing up the point now. Like, Travis asks, would we say Naji is in his prime now? And Barber asks, Naji may be entering his prime now. And, lo and behold, Derrick Henry, we talk about 3 seasons. And then he took off. Then that's whenever he became King Henry. Naji, he's been in the league for 3 seasons, right? Let me pull up Naji real quick. Naji, 3 seasons in the league, and he is entering his age 26 season. So the next 2 seasons, he'll be 26 and 27. So, yeah, like, if he becomes a monster this year, you might just say that Arthur Smith is a better offensive coordinator people want to give him credit for. And I don't think that there's a lot of people that are saying, Arthur Smith is a bad offensive coordinator. I think you could make an argument that he wasn't a very good head coach, but that's a completely different job. You have to worry about all 53 guys on the roster, including the practice squad, as compared to just the offense, right? So I'm not trying to say that Derrick Henry was made by Arthur Smith. I'm not saying that at all. Derrick Henry, like I said, he has still had very productive seasons since then. But his 2 monster years, his 2 huge years, were just so happened to coincide when Arthur Smith was the offensive coordinator. And Ryan Tannehill's 2 best seasons just so happened to coincide when Arthur Smith was the offensive coordinator. So that's why I'm really curious to see what this running game looks like for the betterment of what can Naji become, he's already productive. Can't argue with the production. 3 1,000-yard seasons. Not worried about that. I mean, the production's there. You could argue efficiency, averaging 3.9 yards per carry. That's not great. But can Arthur Smith help unlock some things with better better refined details with the running concepts? That in turn makes the blocking better. How, again, is it all wide zone stuff? Does he also have a good mix of gap stuff in there? And can all this stuff be conducive so that Naji can just take off and he starts to have his first monster season where you're not arguing about, yeah, he's productive, but he's not efficient. It's like, well, no, now he's productive and efficient. Now he's one of the best running backs in the league because the talent's there and the size is there. All of the tools are there. And then we're not even talking about how Jaylen Warren fits into the picture, and we know what he's capable of. I mean, Matt, even yesterday, I might not agree with it completely, but it's not an argument without merit. Matt thinks that Jaylen's a better running back than Najee Harris. And he said it yesterday. And, I might not necessarily agree just because I think Najee's been dealt a bad hand. But Jaylen has also gone from undrafted guy and in 2 seasons become 1B to a first-round draft pick. I mean, you cannot deny what Jaylen's done. And so I'm not denying the fact. And again, I don't want this to get into a Naji versus Jaylen debate because, Travis says it here. They're 2 different runners. They are. Right now they're thunder and lightning. You don't have to think of them as oil and water, as Matt put it yesterday. Like, you don't have to think about it that way. You don't have to think about it. It's like, we got to put these guys up against each other. No, right now they're a tandem and one of the best ones in the league. And that's why I'm curious, like, what is this going to do? What is this going to look like? Not just, hey, how does Naji look with his reps? Hey, how does Jaylen look with his reps? I'm not as worried about that. Is it something worth paying attention to? Of course it is. That's one of the reasons why you're there. But how schematically, how are the Steelers trying to get this running game to hit another level? Because they're already one of the better running back duos in the league. They just are. One of 2 teams had a pair of running backs that each hit 1,000 yards from scrimmage, and the Steelers were one of them. They have a very, very good, one of the best running back duos in the league. What can help them get to that next level? Because, man, I'll tell you what, if this team becomes a dominant running game, if this becomes a dominant running team, they can very well compete in the AFC. You can talk about quarterback play all you want, and I've stressed it on here. You have to have a good quarterback, no doubt whatsoever. I've said it a million times. I'm not going to have to say it again, that quarterback, like having a franchise quarterback gives you the best chance to win more than anything else. But if you don't have that, and you can't just automatically assume that Russell Wilson's going to find a fountain of youth, and you can't automatically assume that Justin Fields is going to just figure it out in Pittsburgh when he didn't in Chicago. In the meantime, what you can do is try to turn this team into a legitimate powerhouse in terms of running the football. And when in an era of the NFL in which defenses are really probably have never been smaller and faster, right? Like, think about all of the sub-package stuff. The Steelers themselves run out of their nickel more than any other package. They don't even run out of their base 3-4 more than anything else. Their base 3-4 is pretty much meant for, like, when they have to defend, when they're playing the Ravens and the Browns. I mean, that's really what it's meant for. Or your typical, like, third and short, like 3rd and 1. But even then, you're getting more into a 4-down lineman situation anyway, like your goal line sets and stuff like that. So, and this is a good question. We can kind of transition from it, and I don't want to go too much longer because Ramon show starts in less than 20 minutes. William brings this up too, really quick, just on between Naji and Jaylen. William says Warren has a better reaction to vision. I think that I'm not denying that completely, but their running styles are very different because Naji is patient. Naji is a patient runner, and he doesn't. I don't think it's it's far-fetched to say that Naji doesn't have the same burst as Jaylen. Jaylen is that put a foot in the ground and go, and that's one of the reasons why Le'Veon Bell was so good, is because he was a blend of the two. He had that ability to kind of run over defenders like Naji does, but he could put that foot in the ground and just change a direction on a dime. Like, it was just, that's why he was so good for the time that he was, is because he was able to be patient, foot in the ground, go, and didn't have to have an elite top speed. But his change of direction was so good because he was just so good at watching things break down, watching how the blocking was breaking down, and then he could just hit a hole and go. Warren is very good at, okay, see hole, hit hole. And that's why he's so good when it comes to the gap stuff, because gap concepts are, you have a predetermined place you're going, because that's where the offensive linemen are trying to, pave a lane for you. Zone is different. Zone, you have to read and react. And Naji gets a bad rap when it comes to that kind of stuff. He knows how to not just see, but also even manipulate. He even did it to Patrick Queen a couple times last season. I saw him do it. There was one game. It was the home win over the Ravens last season. There was one where Patrick Queen was kind of like trying to hide behind like some things so that Naji couldn't see him, because what Patrick Queen's trying to do is to get Naji to make him make that first move. And what Naji did was he kind of did the same thing back to Patrick Queen. He kind of did this like almost like, oh, I'm just going to cut up the middle. And so Patrick Queen then reacted and stayed up the middle. And then Naji just kind of did that little hezzy and then went back, and he actually went to his primary attack point, to the outside, because it was an outside zone run. And he ended up getting I think it was like a 7 or 8 yard gain. We're talking about a modest gain here, but we're also talking like executed it perfectly and even manipulated a linebacker in the process. Like, Naji knows how to do that stuff, and he knows how to do it because he's been running zone ever since Alabama. So Naji knows how to do it. They're just two different running backs, and it's easier to see with Jaylen because his change of direction is so good, and because he is very, very much see hole, hit hole. That's where I'm going. And when Jaylen does read the play right in zone, it looks great because he is that put a foot in the ground and go. He did it in his touchdown run against the Rams. His outside zone, your primary attack point is the backside of the play side, tight end. That's where you're running. That's where you're looking, but you're also looking at how the rest of the play is developing. Jaylen runs. He sees the middles cutting open because Sayamalo was just pancaking Rams. And so he foot in the ground went and burst up the middle, touchdown. Jaylen's burst shows up better because like he has a better burst, but Naji knows how to also read, react, and manipulate even when it comes to that stuff too. They're both good. They're both good. That's the solace to take away. And that's why I'm saying you shouldn't make it like Naji versus Jaylen. You should just take it as they're thunder and lightning, and they're both really, really good. That's the way I would put it. Joshua had a good question here, really, really quick before I got to that. The real question is, how much cap do we dedicate to the running back room? Because the bill's coming, and he offers like maybe $20 million. I think this is ultimately the main reason why we haven't seen the Steelers or why we saw Omar Khan decline the 5th-year option on Naji. And the main reason why, I think, is to maintain flexibility, because as important as the running game is for the Steelers this season, what's more important than anything is getting a quarterback. It just is. It supersedes everything. Whether that's Russell Wilson, and the Steelers they're convinced that Russell Wilson he's a better quarterback for us, and we can get him locked up for 2 or 3 years, and at least for 2 or 3 years, we don't have to worry about quarterback because we have good quarterback play. And that is ultimately the ultimate game changer. If you have a good quarterback, doesn't necessarily have to be great, doesn't have to be elite, but if you have a good quarterback, that unlocks so many more things. And then, of course, the example I brought up earlier, if Justin Fields does figure it out, and he all of a sudden becomes that franchise level type quarterback, because for whatever reason it wasn't clicking in Chicago, it's now clicking in Pittsburgh. If that's the reason, then you got to dedicate the money to the quarterback. So I think that's why, because listen, both Naji and Jaylen's contracts are up after this season. Naji is now going to be hitting unrestricted free agency. Jaylen will become a restricted free agent, so the Steelers still have some control there. So, but as important as the running game is for this year's team, they have to be thinking about quarterback. They have to be thinking about dedicating money to quarterback, which I think is why a lot of these moves that Omar is making gives the Steelers the ability to remain flexible. So, and Jordan says here, good quarterbacks keep you competitive. Great quarterbacks win big games. Yes, but in case you don't have a great quarterback, but you have a good quarterback, if you're able to surround him with other things, potentially even a great defense, you can not just be competitive. You can win big games. You can get to the conference championship. You can even win that conference championship. Heck, if everything goes right and the stars align, you could even win the Super Bowl. It's happened, right? It's happened multiple times. There are plenty of good quarterbacks that have won, not quarterbacks that'll be in the Hall of Fame, but I would say good quarterbacks. There have been good quarterbacks that have won, and it's usually because when you look at Brock Purdy's a good example. Has he won a Super Bowl yet? No, but I would call him a good quarterback. But the reason why the 49ers are thought to be a Super Bowl favorite, or to at least be right in that competition where they can at least make it to the Super Bowl, is because the rest of the roster is so good. So, and Jordan says, I agree, but that requires a great defense. And yes, it does. Yes, it does. And that's why we haven't talked about it at all in this episode, but that's why so much of the Steelers needing to be competitive requires the defense to be great. And that's why I think with a lot of the moves that they've made, making that inside linebacker room so much better with Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson, and then, upgrading the corner opposite of Joey Porter Jr., Dante Jackson, could be a solid number 2, solidifying slot corner with bringing back Cam Sutton, giving Minkah Fitzpatrick a good running partner with Deshaun Elliott, who can let Minkah be Minkah at that point. Because if Minkah's clicking on all cylinders and TJ's clicking on all cylinders and Cam gets healthy and is able to maintain his health and be productive that way, everything else will align, and that defense could be one of the best in the league. I don't think that's really some sort of, oh, Chris, you're off your rocker. No, I think that if Minkah's clicking on all cylinders and TJ's playing, if TJ's TJ and Joey Porter Jr. is even just as good as he was last year, they have enough pieces on that defense for the defense to be great. I don't know about the best in the league, but top 5, I think that's very realistic. As long as they aren't shredded by injuries, I think this could be a top 5 defense. I don't know if I would just go into the season right now before they've even taken a snap in Latrobe, much less the preseason, and just go ahead and automatically say, oh yeah, on paper, this is the top 5 defense. But is it capable of that? Yeah. Yes, it is. 100%. Yes. So Joshua Dobbs brings up, just on the quarterback thing, Dilfer, Brad Johnson, Flacco, even Eli and Ben all have one thing in common. The best example I could give of a good quarterback that won Super Bowls was Eli Manning. He was a good quarterback. He wasn't great. He wasn't bad. Near the end, he was bad, but he was a good quarterback. Not a Hall of Famer. I would not vote for him to be in the Hall of Fame. A good quarterback, and he had a good enough roster. And the one thing that Eli had was he had the ability to turn it on in a big game. And I think that's why there was such hope for Kenny Pickett to develop, because he showed the ability to turn it on in the clutch. Eli had that. Eli had that ability. Wasn't always great. Wasn't always playing at a great level. And that's why I said I would call him a good quarterback. Over the course of his career, he was good. Wasn't great. Wasn't elite. I wouldn't put him in the Hall of Fame. He was good. But anybody who can brag about beating Tom Brady in the Super Bowl twice. Jordan says 2 Super Bowls numbers not that different from 7s from Big Ben. I still think Ben was a better quarterback. I think Ben's a first ballot Hall of Famer, to be completely honest. I'm curious now. We can wrap this up because we're like 8 minutes away from Ramon. Really quick, we'll have this be the fun little thing to end the show. I'm gonna pull it up real quick. Ben Roethlisberger versus Eli Manning. So Ben 64,000 yards, Eli 57,000. Eli's completion percentage was 60.3. Yeesh, that's kind of low. Ben's was 64.4, and that's for like Ben spending a good portion of the early part of his career playing backyard football. Ben had 418 touchdowns, 211 picks. Eli had 366 touchdowns to 244 picks. I'm sorry. Ben was a much better quarterback. Just that touchdown to interception ratio. Ben's yards per attempt was 7.6. Eli's was 7. Yeah. Ben won 2 passing titles. Eli won none. Yeah, I'm sorry. Ben was a much better quarterback. I'm giving that to Ben. Yeah. I'm giving that to Ben. I'm sorry. I think Ben's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think Eli goes in the Hall of Very Good at best. So I think, yeah, I think Big Ben's a Hall of Famer. Whenever I give you that whole 75% of teams that have won the Super Bowl, Mark says, look at win percentage also. First, I've already taken down the windows. I don't like looking at win percentage because that is a team-based thing. It's one of the reasons why I don't like the argument that Terry Bradshaw was better than Big Ben, because Terry Bradshaw won 4 Super Bowls and Ben only won 2. That's a team thing. That's a team effort. Yards, like passing yards, passing touchdowns, that is more directing, like yards per attempt. That's more on the quarterback than it is on, like, yeah. So I don't like looking at team stats to measure quarterbacks. That's just me personally. Everybody's different. It's one of the great things that about sports is that we can all have different opinions. It doesn't always have to be, look, mine's right and yours is right. Yeah. So, all right, we're gonna wrap it up. We're gonna close this out. Ramon and DK coming up in less than 6 minutes. So really appreciate today. Appreciate you guys. I thought it was a pretty good show today. Good conversation. No show tomorrow. Obviously 4th of July, enjoy your holiday. Please be safe. If you're popping fireworks and stuff like that, please be safe. I have witnessed in person too many firework injuries. It's not worth it. But enjoy it, whether you're grilling out, popping fireworks, whatever you're doing, celebrate the holiday. Be back on Friday for a show Friday. That's the plan, at least for right now. And hopefully by the time we talk again on Friday, I'll have a house under contract up there. That'll be good. So Barbara asked Friday show, Chris. Yes, I plan to be here Friday. That is the plan. We'll see. I'll keep you guys updated in the community section on here. All right, 5 minutes away, Ramon show. Tune in, have fun. Have a good holiday. Happy 4th. See you guys. Catch you on the flippity flip.